Kim, tell us what's on your radar.
During the Me Too movement, numerous people were confused as to why a woman would ever feel pressured to sleep with her boss to keep a job. For many, the solution was simple: just quit. It seems so easy. Obviously, if your employer is pressuring you to do something you're not comfortable with, find a new employer. But for the person making these statements, have they ever dealt with the stress and anxiety of losing a job and having no idea how they're going to pay next month's bills, or being faced with the job of their dreams or a career they've worked for, they've worked years for, only to have one single demand from one single employer in one single moment threaten it all? The people whose advice is to just quit seem to think the woman being forced is someone who is working a minimum wage job at a restaurant or a retail store, which can easily be replaced by simply looking in the help wanted ads. And in many instances, this is true. Women in all sorts of jobs are being sexually harassed at work every day. And maybe in today's job economy, it would be easy for these women to quit since there are so many businesses looking to hire. But what about the woman who has earned her college degree in a specialized field, working for a specialized company in a specialized position? If her boss tells her she must do something personally that she doesn't want to do or lose her job, what realistically are her options? This is how the Me Too movement came about. Women in highly competitive and specialized jobs were being asked to do something they didn't want to do or lose either the chance at a job or the current job they were already in. Admittedly, it's easier to walk away from a job you're just interviewing for and dreaming about. But what about a job you already have? And this one person is threatening it based on this one action you don't want to do, but are being forced to do. Sexual harassment might be hard for some to grasp, but many are getting a dose of this sort of coercion right now in regards to vaccine mandates. In recent weeks, numerous people have been forced to choose between their job or their bodily autonomy. And it isn't easy to just say, I quit. Doctors, airline pilots, lawyers, contractors, news anchors, teachers, and more are being told they need to get the vaccine despite any of their personal objections or lose their job. And for many, getting a new job doesn't solve the problem when every other employer in their field will tell them the exact same thing. For these people, the choice is to get an entirely new career, one that will likely bring in less, which could cause them to lose their homes, amongst other things, or do this one simple thing with their bodies they don't really want to do. It will be quick, nearly painless, and over before you know it, said Harvey Weinstein. Yesterday, talk show host Tim Pool tweeted out, "No one who claims to oppose vaccine mandates who then went and got vaccinated due to their fear of losing their job or money actually opposes mandates." Now, Tim was met with backlash from many people who expressed the sentiment that when a person is faced with doing something they don't want to do or feeding their families and keeping their homes, they'll choose to feed their families and keep the roof over their heads. People are not nihilistic by nature. People will tolerate doing things they don't want to do if it means keeping the things they care about or have worked hard for. And for most people, if it means giving up their bodily autonomy and doing something they don't really want to do for a brief moment, they will unfortunately do it. Now, obviously, hanging a job over a person's head is effective. Many who are in favor of vaccine mandates are celebrating this. New York Times known Schreiber writes, United COVID vaccine mandate has been remarkably effective. Fewer than 250 out of approximately 67,000 had not complied as of yesterday. Sure, obviously, if you force people to choose between their livelihood or doing something they are opposed to, they'll usually choose the path of least resistance. And unfortunately, in these scenarios, a brief moment of physical discomfort, which may or may not have lasting consequences, seems to be easier than the choice of losing a job and being guaranteed to have to deal with an immense amount of stress and anxiety, in some cases, total ruin. So yes, coercion works, but is it ethical? What choice does a person really have when told by a person in power that they must do something with their body they don't want to do or face dire consequences? Having food on the table and a roof over one's heads are essential. They aren't luxuries. So it isn't truly a choice if one is being threatened in this way. And unfortunately, when it comes to both the Me Too movement and the vaccine mandates, people on both sides of the aisle claim the choice is easy. Just quit, depending on which topic we are discussing and which side of the aisle the other person happens to be on. But the reality is, quitting is often not that easy. So, Look, I'm very against these mandates. I do think that it goes completely against a person's choice of bodily autonomy I'm actually against all mandates for vaccination for kids, even in schools, just like the UK and Australia. They don't have that mandate on people. They encourage it, they recommend it, but they don't mandate it on you. And I just don't know why we cannot move towards that in this country to realize that what a person does with their body should be completely their choice. I don't know if you see this going in. Which direction do you see this going in, Ryan? Do you think we're going to see more mandates, or do you think people are going to ease off of these eventually?
I think they'll ease off when we get out of the pandemic, and I think the pandemic is key to understanding these mandates. I don't think the analogy quite works because it matters what the thing is that's being done. I don't think there's anybody who will argue at this point that sexual harassment is okay. Because you can just quit. Like if you think of it on a spectrum, you could say, well, let's say there's a mandate that all workers at the end of a shift at this chicken plant in Iowa will be beaten. And if you don't like that, you can quit. People are like, no, that's crazy. The idea that you can quit doesn't justify this horrific practice. That's the case with any labor abuses, and it's certainly the case with sexual harassment. So then, if the analogy doesn't work, then you have to return to the question of whether or not what is being mandated is for the benefit of all of us as a community, and for the benefit of the workplace itself, and for the benefit of the individual person. And that's where I think the debate has to be had.
I think what you got really right there, Kim, is that liberals used to, and maybe many still do, in some circumstances, talk a good game about the importance of workplace job security, of being able to make a living wage and all of that kind of thing. But from a lot of what I write about cancel culture type stuff, liberals, progressives have become among the people most keen to get people fired from their jobs for having said something offensive once a million years ago. And it's like the punishment for having said something offensive once a million years ago should be joblessness, homelessness, lack of health care. Really? That's what you guys think now? And so there is a little bit of there's a kind of that hypocrisy that I think you were alluding to.
And I do think some collective bargaining around these mandates would be appropriate. Like the unions got a bunch of flack from liberals for saying that, hey, we don't just want this foisted on us. We want to enter into talks about how this is going to be rolled out. When are these shots going to be given out? Are we going to be given paid time off? For the side effects of it. Let's talk about this.
The teenage kids don't have a union, though. They can't. They don't have that kind of. They're not public employees.
Right.
Yeah, I just think that no matter what it is, whether it be, I understand your point that, well, okay, maybe the vaccination could be argued that it's for the greater good, and so therefore people should be compelled or even forced into doing things that are for the greater good. I just don't think anyone should ever be forced or coerced in any way. If you want to incentivize people, then I think that's fair enough. Maybe not with Krispy Kreme donuts like they were doing at one point, when we know that obesity is a contributing factor to a negative outcome. But certainly, if you want to incentivize people, that's one thing. But to coerce or to mandate anybody to do anything with their body that doesn't actually have anything to do with the actual job itself, I just don't know how we can. Then who gets to be the arbitrator of what is for the greater good? I could get into some really, you and I, Ryan, with our philosophy degrees, could sit here and philosophize for a while about a variety of scenarios where even perhaps, you could think of a really heinous act as being at some point for the greater good. You could say, what if there's only one woman left on Earth and there's 3 men and they have to populate? Do we then say this is for the greater good of humanity?
The militia's coming to kill you. The baby is crying in the bunker with you. You have to kill the baby.
Oh my God, Robbie, geez.
So I was feeling left out of the philosophy degree.
That Ursula Le Guin type situation is why I actually added and good for the individual as needing to be in part of that debate. So. But we can easily come up with ideas or examples of where we are okay with coercion, like measles, mumps, rubella, like those types of vaccinations we've accepted. And the answer to, well, who decides? Collectively, as a democratic society, we have decided that we want to eradicate smallpox. And
right,
and
but
that
I don't
as a
understand
result-
why the UK. But then why did the UK and Australia decide not to? I mean, that just seems to me like they've said no to those mandates. Even for children going to school, you do not have to get your kid vaccinated against measles or polio to go to school in the UK or in Australia.
I don't know about the UK. Australia's super impressed with their ability to keep diseases out, and that's kind of like a cultural pride that they take over there. I'm not sure what's going on in the UK, but different democratic publics can make up their minds in different ways, and that's as it should be.
We'll have more Rising coming up after this. Stay tuned.